Hi, Grit.
Hi, Anand. How are you?
I'm good. It's very nice to see you today.
Nice to see you too.
So, today my guest is Grit Vanden Berghe. She's a full professor in the Department of Computer Science at KU Leuven in Belgium. She's currently a member of a research unit called NUMA, that is Numerical Analysis and Applied Mathematics, and leads the CODES research group located at KU Leuven-Gent. Her fundamental research activities involve mathematical modeling and the development of intelligent search algorithms such as heuristics and decomposition methods for different combinatorial optimization problems. She has successfully developed many heuristic decomposition algorithms, smart ways of tightening objectives or relaxing constraints, heuristics based on lower and upper bounding, and general-purpose local search operators. These new algorithmic components have helped achieve the best computational results in several international competitions and benchmarking challenges. Grit also has a vast experience on scheduling problems and particularly on developing a general model for personnel rostering that would be applicable across a wide range of healthcare organizations. She's an author of many papers published in prestigious international journals like Transportation Science, Omega, Journal of Scheduling, EJR, and so on. So Grit, it's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation.
Thank you for the invitation. It was nice to meet you in November, wasn't it?
Yes, yes,
for
yes.
the first time.
Yeah.
It was really nice to meet you. Campus was closed at that time when you tried to organize a meeting. So I hope you enjoyed the guided tour at night through Ghent.
Absolutely, it was fantastic. We also had a very nice dinner, and I mean, it was great. So, Grit, let's start. Did I pronounce your name properly, or did I mess up?
You pronounced it unbelievably well compared to many other people. You did very well.
Yeah. So, could you please say it yourself so it becomes clear?
Yeah, that's a bit difficult because the way I pronounce my name is not the way people in Flanders would pronounce it. I come from the West, where we have difficulty pronouncing the first letter of my name. So my parents and I would say Greet, whereas in Flanders, people would say Greet, which is a bit difficult for me.
Okay.
But you did well.
Yeah, thanks. So, are you originally from Ghent or Ghent, depending on English or Flemish, or do you come from someplace else in Belgium?
I was born in West Flanders, in the west of Flanders, in a little place called Anzehem. I grew up in Anzehem. And
how far is from Ghent, the place?
Oh, 35, 40 kilometers, not much more.
And tell me about your family background.
I grew up in a nice and warm family. I have one sister and two brothers. I'm the eldest, and then comes my sister and then my brothers. It was really nice back then, but we grew up in a small village. So compared to what my children experience now while living in a relatively large city for Belgium at least, there was not really much to do in the village I grew up.
What did your parents do for a living?
My father worked in a bank. He was leading a bank office with a few people, although I'm sure he would have preferred to do work outside in nature. But when my parents had a few children, I thought my mother found it too dangerous to do other work than office work, and so my father worked there very near our house, and my mother was a housewife. She stayed home to look after the children.
It seems that she came from a family of musicians, right?
Well, the musical talent definitely comes from my mother's side. It skipped me. It's more or less skipped my generation. And there are a few musicians in the next generation. So my mother liked music. I tried to study some music, but we didn't have an opportunity to learn to play an instrument in the village. So only doing scores was a bit boring. So I regret now that I stopped. But my children play music. So
I know your son plays the saxophone, right?
yeah, he plays a saxophone indeed, and a bit of guitar, and my daughter plays the clarinet.
Ah, very, very nice.
Yeah.
So did any of your siblings also become a scholar?
Yes, my eldest brother also he did a PhD, and he now also works at KU Leuven in the medical faculty. So he's not a medical doctor, but he's an engineer, bioengineer we call it, with who took some additional courses in biomedical engineering, and so he became a professor later on.
Okay. You were born in the late 60s. So what did you do to make yourself busy during your teenage years, in the late 70s all the way to the mid 80s?
Okay. Well, as a child, I guess I read all the time. I guess I read the entire library of Nottingham until I was old enough to take the bike to Waregem, which had a larger library. So I remember me reading more or less all the time. We didn't really watch television at home, not too often at least. So reading, and I also really enjoyed the movement of youngsters in the village. So it's not scouting, I guess you won't know the name. It's called Hero. The movement I joined, and I think I really spent a lot of my teenage time there till I went to the university. So we used to come back home every weekend, even as university students, with a bag full of dirty laundry and to eat whatever mom had prepared. But then I guess I spent almost every weekend at this Hero place. So it was really nice. I have very nice memories of it.
Yeah. So what activities took place in this movement?
Officially, I guess it's playing with friends. But the games were quite organized. We had things like dropping and some games which required a bit of fantasy and in which everybody had a role. We enjoyed playing some theater things for the parents, but that was only once a year. But we spent so much time on knitting costumes and preparing the plays.
So you're more into backstage rather than acting?
Oh, absolutely. I was the one doing the costumes and not the acting. My sister was on stage. I wasn't. Most certainly.
So were you a shy kid?
Yes, I was a very shy kid. Yes, yeah.
And what about school? Did you study with boys and girls, or only girls?
Yeah, it's almost hard to believe, but up until I went to university, so at the age of 18, we had always been separated, apart from kindergarten. Kindergarten was mixed boys and girls, but then primary school, 6 years of primary school, 6 years of secondary school, was split. I think in most schools it was the case. It's strange to think about it now because I don't think it exists anymore in this country.
Were there any differences between the way classes were taught for boys and girls?
I think so. I really think so. Yes. So, for example, in secondary school, we had to learn how to do knitting and all kinds of, not needlework, but things which most girls hated, really hated. My brothers didn't have to do it. I didn't hate it, by the way, but these were not nice classes. And I think the boys learned much more about history and politics and so on than we did. it was maybe not part of the program, but I think that some of their teachers were different. I don't know. I believe there was a difference. Maybe it was due to the school I attended, but I believe there was a difference. Yeah. Also, in terms of sciences, so my brothers learned many more sciences and much more about sciences in secondary school than I did.
Oh.
That's what I think, yeah.
But were you a good student?
I was considered a good student, yes. In primary and secondary school, I was. It was shocking for me to go to university and to see how all these people knew so much more than I did. But, up until the age of 18.
Yeah. Which university degree did you choose, and was it easy to get a position?
Well, I choose the subject of engineering. It's now called engineering science. I don't even think we had an English name for it back then. And it was one of the only subjects for which it was required to do an entrance exam. I'm sure for some artistic things like theater or music or so, it was also required. But among the sciences or humanities or medical sciences, this was the only subject which required to do this. It has changed now. But in the old days, we had to take an entrance exam. 1 week of pure maths exam. 1 week of maths exams. Yeah.
But did you pass in your first attempt, or it took more?
No, I failed in my first attempt, and it was really embarrassing. I wasn't aware of the fact that you could properly prepare for these exams. So I went to a girls' school, so we went to theater together. We had many classes about art and not doing art, but learning about art was really interesting. But I never had any math teacher who told me, shouldn't you look at the exams of previous years to see if you understand everything? So I was really shocked by the difficulty of these exams, and I failed on one subject dramatically. So that's why I had to retake the exam. And it's a bit embarrassing to say this subject was numerical mathematics. And I had never thought about it, but these questions were all based on, for example, add an extremely large number up with a very small number. And with very small, I mean 10 to the minus. So I thought I have to add them up before I can continue computing. And the secret was, now it sounds so silly, drop the very small one. If you have to multiply, if you multiply by something very small, it all becomes 0 and so on. So it's so obvious now, after I studied engineering maybe, but at that time I didn't know. So I had to retake the exam. But when my cousin learned that I hadn't passed, he's a man, he told me, which subject did you find difficult? And I told him, well, this one. He said, oh, it's easy. Drop the small numbers in additions and so on. And so it was not as easy as that. But then I realized I should have prepared for this exam. It's not sufficient to rely on what I've learned in secondary school.
But do you think it was due to a lack of mentorship or proper guidance when you were in school, or is something that you had to figure out yourself and that was part of the way things went?
What I definitely learned is that all the boys' schools in the vicinity of where we lived had additional maths classes on Wednesday afternoons with their math teacher to prepare for this exam. And I wish I'd known about it, or I had it too. I mean, they were probably much smarter than I was, but I didn't know what I was expected to know. But by retaking the exam, I could pass and start the program.
Right. And was it a shock for you when you joined university, other than observing that there are other students that are really, really smart, but the level of the classes or the way things were organized, did that have any sort of impact on you, or you didn't have a very tough transition from school to university?
I think it was a very tough transition indeed. So yeah, I think I remember after one day, the professor said we will repeat a little bit what you saw in secondary school, but one day was enough to have all the physics, all the chemistry, and all the maths I ever heard of. So it was relatively fast for me, but I quite enjoyed it.
So eventually you had to pick an emphasis for your engineering degree. Which one did you select?
I selected metals and materials science, or I think it's officially now metallurgy and materials science. And it may sound a bit odd, but we had a very inspiring professor in second year, a very, very inspiring professor. So he was enthusing, he had nice examples from his research, he explained everything very well. And I'm absolutely certain that this influenced me to choose the subject of metals and materials engineering. And I don't regret it at all. I think it was fantastic because we had an almost equal number of professors as students in this department. It was definitely not the most famous subject to study. We did fantastic things in the lab. We were allowed to use electron microscopes, all sorts of very expensive equipment. And I also remember that we did many excursions when I was a student, many more I think than we offer now to our students. We visited the coal mines in Flanders before they closed. We climbed down. We went down 800 meters.
Wow.
Yeah, we crawled for 300 meters. So aside the miners who were still digging up coal. And then we came back to the lab by bus. The dirt was still in our eyes and ears. So very fantastic experience indeed.
Yeah, and how was the system back then? Was it a master's degree already?
No, it was not called masters. I would call it masters now. So we had a completely different organization. We first had to study 2 years of math and pure sciences, after which we could choose an engineering subject. And these engineering subjects were still rather theoretical. They were not very practical. I'm not that practical compared to the people in my lab now. But it was 2 years and 3 years. And the Bologna agreement in Europe, I don't know if you
Yes,
know
of
it.
course, I'm familiar with.
Yeah, so this agreement made all the educational programs turn into bachelor masters, where we now have 3 years of bachelor, and then depending on the subject you choose, 2 master years usually.
So you did masters.
It's not called masters. I call it masters now.
But I mean, were you involved in
engineering?
Yeah. Okay, but did you have to do any research to get the degree?
Yeah. We had to do a master thesis. It was not called master thesis, but it was called thesis. We had to pass a thesis to do independent research supervised by professor and by one assistant. So we had to do this. We had to choose a subject. So we were 23 students when I was in the final year, and there were 23 subjects. And so I wasn't doing operational research then, but the person responsible for the assignment called a professor of operational research to optimize this assignment. So we all had to choose to give points to 3 subjects. three subjects of our choice. So you can imagine many people wanted to do the same subject,
Yeah.
and a few subjects were left over. So they called in an operational research professor to compute the best possible assignment. I guess it was biased. I'm sure that those who were early on in the alphabet had a better chance of getting their choice than the ones in the end. But yeah, it worked out. I got this my favorite subject, although my name begins with V. So I actually worked with this professor, with the inspiring professor. He was I mean, he's still alive. He's a composites expert, composites materials. But he's retired now. But I worked with him to determine the orientation distribution of fibers in short fiber polymer composites. That's nice. Yeah.
Sounds fancy. How did you type your dissertation? We were talking about late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, early 90s. Yeah, I didn't do it on a typewriter, but we didn't have a computer in our student homes. We had some fancy computer-like typewriter at home, but I wasn't at home when I was a student, definitely not during the week. So I went to the department to write parts. We stored them on floppy disks, the parts we had written. It was a nice experience. And I also had a good friend who lived very near my place. She had a computer because she already graduated. She studied chemistry, so chemistry back then was 4 years, not 5. And so I often used her computer, and she actually typed some parts from me. It was yeah.
Nice.
Unbelievable how we did it in those days.
Yeah. And did you have any contact with OR at that moment in time?
Almost none, but when I was in the 4th year, I got a class. I think it was called linear and integer programming or something, from Dirk Catrisse, who was a very young professor in those days, and he taught this course to the mechanical engineers and to the materials engineers. I don't think he taught it to anyone else. I found it fantastic, whereas my fellow metals engineering students almost all hated it, I think. Not hated, but they didn't like it. And I really loved it. I liked to model. I loved the exercises and so on. So, and then in the final year, I decided to take a subject on optimization, which was taught by a metals engineering professor. It was continuous optimization. I also liked it. But that was all. I think the course on linear programming would be 3 ECTS credits if you would have to translate it to the current system. That's all I had. I had. Yeah.
Okay. What did you do after earning your degree? Did you work in the industry, or you continue with your studies?
Well, this professor who did continuous optimization had interesting projects, so he announced them, but it required enrolling in a PhD program, and at that time I didn't think I was capable of doing it, and I also taught 4 years the same subject. I thought I would get bored after a while. So, but I was interested in doing the research, but not in PhD. So then he decided to hire someone else. So if I had done it, I think my life would have been different now. But I decided to look for a job. I was interested in research, so I was looking around a bit. And actually, this position with Professor Vanden Berghe then would start only in April after we graduated in July the year before. So I was still keeping it in the back of my mind as an option, But after a few short interim periods in industry and also actually in teaching, I learned about a position in the polytechnical school, you could say, which was purely focused on research, and they were looking for a metals and materials engineer. So I thought it was fantastic, and I applied and I got it, and I started working on European projects regarding recycling research, recycling, dismantling, and so on.
So you spent about 6 years from 91 to 97 working as a researcher at KU Leuven before officially starting your PhD.
That's right. So we did all sorts of projects together with industry. And at some point, Flanders decided that it was not allowed for people with an engineering degree to teach or become a professor at these polytechnics unless they had a PhD. This was really not my ambition to become a lecturer or so, but there were many others who were lecturing at these polytechnics without a PhD degree. So actually only the scientists, the pure scientists, maths, chemistry, and so on, physics, they required a PhD. Engineers didn't require a PhD. We had studied 1 year longer. I don't really know why not, but suddenly it became necessary. And then the director of our polytechnic, I guess he was searching for people who wanted to join a PhD program. And given that I was doing research already, I kind of said yes to it. So, and I was brought into touch with a professor from the University of Ghent who was in operations research, engineering operations research. But I had a professor on my campus, mathematician, Patrick de Koosmaker. You may want to interview him at some point as well. He was interested in everything, and I believe he didn't know about OR when we started solving vehicle routing problems, container relocation problems in the port of Antwerp, and then at some point nurse rostering too. And so I was into these subjects already without a good scientific background, and then I got enrolled in a PhD program and I had to learn it all.
Right. So during those 6 years, you did not care about writing papers and things like that?
Not at all. No, I think we only cared about making algorithms work, so we were implementing algorithms mostly in C and C++ at that time.
But the way you got involved in formal OR project was kind of by accident, like it was not something that was really expected. It was through an unusual path.
It was by accident indeed, because I was working on projects for metals and materials engineers, and a colleague of mine was working on a project for the distribution of drugs to pharmacies and so on, and I thought, oh, this is nice. I was looking at her work from time to time, and suddenly the software company for which she was working, came back with a fascinating problem, but she was ill or she didn't like it. And then I asked Patrick de Koosmaker, would you mind if I joined the meeting? Because I recognized some of these modeling elements from the 4th year. And he said, oh well, yes. And I liked it so much that I began solving the problem. It was in very close cooperation with the company. And so I guess I developed a personnel rostering solver, which was, so it was being implemented in hospitals almost immediately after I'd written it. So,
but was
continuously. So I received requests from hospitals more or less every day. I had to do patches, and so
Right.
I was more of a software developer than a researcher.
But your part was most about modeling or using solvers, or you had to develop your own heuristics?
Well, it's not as easy as this. So I recognized optimization problems, discrete optimization problems from the integer programming courses. So I thought, okay, that's how to do it. Formulate them mathematically with linear equations. So I knew how to do this. Then I was searching for a solver. I found IBM solver. I thought, okay, I will feed my program to IBM solver. I had never learned or did not remember the complexity problems. So I was immediately confronted with the immense complexity of the problem. So even if I reduced it to 1 week schedules, IBM Solver couldn't do it. I tried a bit of constraint programming, didn't scale. And then Patrick de Kousmaker came with the idea of developing heuristics because he was attending conferences every now and then. So we started developing heuristics, and they worked far better than any mathematical model.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about the experience of attending your first international conferences.
Oh, I was so nervous when I attended conferences. So these were abstract conferences. My first 2 conferences were Euro conferences, and so we only had to submit an abstract. I think all the abstracts were accepted, and I was really nervous to present my work. So during the first conference, I think I was so nervous that I couldn't remember what the people in my session talked about. But in my second conference, which was Euro in Barcelona, I had a talk in a timetabling stream organized by Edmund Burke. And it was a relatively small room, and it was nice and cozy and a very friendly environment. And after my talk, Edmund Burke said, okay, I like what you're doing. We don't do this in Nottingham. Wouldn't you mind to come over? And I thought, whoa, how nice. So I went back home, and Patrick de Kousmaker said, very good idea. So I kind of left the work with the company behind to visit the University of Nottingham and to do proper research. That's how it felt.
No, very, very nice. So before we continue with your journey to England, I think you have a nice anecdote involving another Belgian legend in our field in some conference in Barcelona too.
Okay. Again, Barcelona. Yes. So many years after this first Barcelona experience, I attended IFORS in Barcelona again. I can't remember the exact year now. Never mind. And when I left Belgium, the queues at the airport were incredible. So I was a bit frightened that I would miss my flights. But then I spotted Martine Labbé from VRPs. I spotted Martine Labbé also in the queue, and so we thought, okay, if one is late, we will both miss our flight. But we didn't miss our flight. But so it was summer. Some Euro conferences are always in summer. Upon arrival in Valencia, we were the only 2 with missing luggage, Martine and I. So we waited for a bit. Yeah, we had some fun. Yeah, what to do about it. And then I remember that the next days I was looking at Martine to see if she was still wearing the same T-shirt, and she was looking at me. And I think it took 2 days before our suitcase arrived. So we had to wash clothes in the hotel every night. Okay, yeah, nice.
Yeah, I know. I had a similar experience when I went to Peru and to attend a Clio conference, and then later on I went to Machu Picchu, Cusco, and all of that. I spent the entire trip without my luggage. I just had the knapsack, and I had to buy clothes and solve later with the airline company. But I can see how stressful it can be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, it wasn't. I mean, Martine is a very nice and warm person. So due to the fact that we were both in this situation, I guess we made fun of it. It was really nice. And Martine is kind of a role model for many of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, lovely person, and I should thank her for introducing us to. That's very nice of her. You spent a period as a visiting researcher in England. Do you think that visit was a turning point in your career as a researcher?
I believe so. Yes, I do believe so. Because at the institute where I was working, we were doing demand-driven, very practical research, but we didn't care at all about publishing and so on. So these conferences were interesting to me to become familiar with this nice side of science where people meet each other, talk about publications and so on. But so I remember when I arrived in England, I think, so I made a research plan for the next months, which I would propose to Edmund Burke upon arrival. And I told him, look, I would like to do this, I would like to do this. And Edmund said, interesting, yeah. But you know what? Let's first write it all up. Let's write up what you have done. And I think I was a bit disappointed, write it up instead of doing nice new things, but this was a game changer for me. So he forced me, instead of doing the plan, to make a plan for writing up all the things I had done, all the results I had obtained. University of Nottingham had a very good library then. It was before the time of electronic libraries. I mean, we could find papers, but then we had to ask the editor to send copies and so on. So it was a bit difficult. So for me, this was really nice to have access to this library. And so I basically wrote papers while I was there, papers about the work I had been doing the years before.
Right.
So this really changed a lot.
Mm-hmm. So while working on nurse rostering problems, did you have the chance to visit hospitals to acquire more practical insights?
Oh yes, so this was actually an advantage of working with a software company, because from time to time they would take me along to hospitals to help convincing the hospitals that our software would make a difference for them. And then they sometimes wanted me to quickly give feedback regarding the possibility to implement constraints and so on. And so I had the opportunity to talk to many hospital planners, human resources managers in hospitals, head nurses who were doing the research. So I'm glad I had this, because I feel I still rely on this knowledge I acquired there, and this knowledge is not something you could find, or I could find in books. So this was really important for me.
Mm-hmm. You said you were a shy kid, but after meeting you in person last year, I did not find you shy at all. When did that change?
I think it changed after my first conferences. So these first Euro conferences were still not very comfortable for me. I was nervous and shy, and perhaps the teaching made a difference. So
did you become assistant professor right away when you finished your PhD, by the way?
Less than 1 year later.
Okay. Yeah. And teaching came easy to you, or it took a while for you to get used to it?
No. I think I spent far more time preparing than anyone else would do. But the difficulty is that I was teaching students in electronics ICT, and I had no ICT background at all. So algorithms and programming subjects, artificial intelligence, I all had to learn it after I obtained.
I think it's nice to clarify what is ICT for the listeners.
Information and communication technology. I never did communication technology, but yeah, we were teaching students in information technology.
So the teaching experience helped you also to become.
I think it helped a lot
less shy.
to get rid of my shyness. Yes.
Right. I know you kept working on nurse rostering problems after you finished your PhD, and I know that you made an extensive contribution in this class of problems. Could you name some of them?
Well, I'm proud of the solver. We made the nurse rostering solver, so the course software. So the one I developed was in C, semi C++. And then after I graduated, I wrote some research proposals to continue because I had many ideas to go further in this domain, and I was quite lucky to be able to attract funding. So I could afford paying additional PhD students to continue working on it. So, and I believe we now have a very general solver, which is used by companies in 70% of the Belgian hospitals, 100% of the Luxembourg hospitals.
Well done.
So, yeah. So I'm proud of this, but also, I mean, some of the things we developed, some of the models, constraints, objectives, and so on, are relatively different from what you could find in papers before. And we often struggled to get things published if they differed from, here we have a case and here we have some algorithm, some heuristic, and that's how we solve it. So each time we tried to do something different, like for example, showing how important it is to consider the continuous or the rolling horizon in nurse rostering problems. I mean, it's too trivial to talk about it, but all the initial instances had no previous day. So how can you decide whether you put a nurse in the early or in the night shift if you have no clue what the nurse had been doing before? Okay, this sounds a bit silly, but the problem was that these instances required to modify our solver, whereas we thought our solver is meant to do the real thing. So we found it difficult to justify why it was necessary to have a continuous horizon. We together with Patrick, I published some categorization of nurse rostering problems where we identified specific objectives and constraints. But we should continue working on it because we didn't say anything about complexity or solvability. It was just a way of trying to direct people to the right publications, to sites, because we can say nurse rostering and the problems are so different that they shouldn't be called the same. And we tried to do this. So
try to organize the
yes,
the literature in a way.
Yeah.
I know you've done also some contributions regarding robust scheduling. Could you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, that was a very nice experience, actually, with a Brazilian PhD student whom I met at a Brazilian workshop, and he was developing rostering software for physicians in a very large hospital. I can't remember the name of the hospital, but it was in Rio Grande do Sul.
Yeah, Rio Grande do Sul is the state. Yeah, you're talking about Tony, probably, right?
Tony Wickert, yes.
Yeah.
So we met him there. His supervisor, Luciana Boriol, said, well, can he come over? It would be nice for him. And Peter Smet, my postdoc, who is also working on nurse rostering, and I said, well, yeah, why not? And we had a fantastic collaboration with Tony Wickert. So, yeah, it's unbelievable. He's not very outspoken, but each time we had ideas, and I think Peter and I have many more ideas than anyone could ever solve. So we pushed many of our ideas onto Tony, and Tony calmly developed these ideas, came to our room with tables full of results. When we said, oh, this is an odd result, Tony said, yes, I thought the same. I analyzed it. So it was a really nice experience. And the robust rostering made us feel we need to go further on this subject. Because unlike in scheduling, where you could say, okay, we have machines, we will build in some redundancy, some buffer time or redundant machines, you cannot really do this with people. So what Tony did was identifying which skills could replace other skills. But then you have to be careful, because if somebody could replace an ill colleague at some day, you have to be careful that this person didn't do night work the day before. So he developed a robustness metric, which we employed in an objective to arrive at robust roster. This was only one attempt. We really intend to go further on this subject. It's very nice cooperation.
Nice. What about other research interests? I know you like to collaborate with companies, and you like to study problems that come from the industry, right?
Yes, yeah. That's actually what my current faculty is encouraging. So Faculty of Engineering Technology. So we are training engineering students who need very practical skills. So we talk a lot to companies, and we try to cooperate with them for research. So we have port operators, software developers who do vehicle routing. My colleague Tony Wouters does cutting and packing with a large number of companies.
Nice. It seems that you also became interested in devising heuristic dual bounds for combinatorial optimization problems. Could you comment on this, please?
Yeah. I don't really know how to call them, so we call them heuristic dual bounds. So that was actually work we did with another PhD student from Brazil, Tulio Toffolo.
My great friend.
Yeah, my great friend too. Yeah, he's a very talented researcher and a nice person.
Yeah.
So we wanted to develop heuristic decomposition approaches, which are somewhat similar to the mathematical decomposition approaches, but we wanted to use human knowledge on how to cut problems, how to separate sub-problems from others, solve these sub-problems, you use them as bounds. But again, if the sub-problems are too complicated, we thought, okay, let's solve them, or let's try to find solution with the heuristic, and then use this solution to kind of cut off some parts of the search space. So that was nice research we did with Tulio. Tulio was a very productive researcher, very good at writing papers, a very good software developer as well, and I believe we made an important contribution there, which we are still using. So we are still using the ideas he developed in current projects.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Tulio. I mean, he's super talented in many ways, right? And also he's
that's right.
I like to say that he's a true gentleman too, right? Really.
Absolutely.
Has a posture, and he's a very, very diligent, responsible, caring person. Very, very nice guy.
Yeah. That's true, and he helped everybody else in the lab. So if you look at his publications, you will see that he has cooperated with everybody who was in the lab during the time.
Yeah, I'm not surprised to hear that.
Yeah.
One of your contributions that I like the most is the Slack Induction by string removals algorithm, also known as SISRs, for vehicle routing problems. Could you explain more or less the idea of the algorithm for those who are not familiar with the method, and also the story behind the development of the heuristic?
Okay, I'm glad you want to talk about this heuristic, because I'm indeed very proud of it. By the way, it was not me who developed it. It was Jan Christians, former PhD student, very talented programmer, very talented mathematically. So I actually hired Jan before he had a master degree. I had taught some courses to him, and he surprised me so much that I wanted to work with him. So, okay, he started working on problems which were brought to us by industry, among which a vehicle routing problem. So the company was relying on mathematical solvers, and they failed to scale the problems up. And they visited us, and we said, okay, we think we can do this. And Jan was so fast, so he impressed them a lot. The people we worked with decided to set up their own company, with which we did a PhD grant, which was largely supported by the Flemish government. So Jan did this PhD grant. He solved all sorts of practical problems for the company, but he was working so fast that he did not really make progress scientifically, because he was solving cases. And after a while, we decided to let him do pure research, because the company was working with the solver already. And then I'm really proud of what he did. He analyzed what was really needed to do good vehicle routing local search heuristics, and instead of doing random swaps and inserts and so on, what we could find in many other papers, instead of doing large neighborhood search algorithms, which also are very good publications, very good performance, he really analyzed what was going on in the solution, and he decided to free some Slack capacity in for example, capacitated vehicle routing problem. He freed capacity, but he also freed what we call spatial slack. So he would remove assignments within a same geographical region, hoping that a reassignment of these visits would be better than what was done before. And this, I believe it's very smart, and it's so simple to explain.
Yes.
And it works nicely. So he spent some time on it, targeted some benchmark instances, those by Uchoa.
Yeah. I'm a co-author of that.
I know. And his algorithm performed really well, so we decided to write it up. We were not allowed to share the code, regrettably, due to the cooperation with the company. I would have wanted to share the code, because Jan was a very good programmer, beautiful code, just like Tulio's. And but then we submitted the paper to transportation science, and well, the reviewers didn't like the title, so they suggested to change the title. Now I'm happy with the title. I think SISRs reflect some cutting, and it's nice. But they said, okay, we see that it works, but you should also apply your algorithm to, and then 20 other problems, like pickup and delivery, vehicle routing with time windows. He had a vehicle routing with time windows algorithm, but he had to run all the experiments on all these classes of instances. But in the end, I'm glad we spent the time to update the paper, because it got finally accepted.
For the record, I was not the reviewer. Because we ended up you ended up solving problems that we did in the past, and
I we
saw,
compared against your algorithm.
That was
which was very good, by the way.
So it's nice to know the story behind the SISRs, and I completely agree with you. It's a relatively simple idea, but yet very effective, and also very doable to reproduce it, which I think is a very important aspect of the method.
I'm glad you say so, because I would have preferred to share the code, but we regularly receive emails from people who are trying to reproduce it, and I thought it was quite clear, but there are a few ambiguities in the paper, so we interact with these people. But I learned that students have managed to re-implement the local
Yes.
search operator. So
Yeah.
that's really nice. I'm
Right.
happy.
Yeah. I was involved in a project that was led by Thibaut Vidal with his students, and they were trying to reproduce many of the state-of-the-art CVRP heuristics, including SISRs. And the students, they succeeded, and it was actually the one who performed the best at the time, even outperforming the one by Thibaut. I mean, the implementation. Yeah. So it was fun. Yeah. And it was actually the first time we met online when the students were presenting their results. And
indeed, but it was it was in a very special video setting, not as
yes,
comfortable as
yeah,
the
right,
one you
yeah.
have
There was a
set
lot
up
going
now.
on at the same time, so yeah. When you're solving complex real-life problems full of intricate details, and you want to write a paper out of it, how do you proceed?
Yeah. This is a very difficult question. First of all, because I don't think all the real-world problems we solve deserve publication. I don't think so. So I'm a little bit against publications in the style I have done something, so please accept my paper. But when we think it's important enough to share some findings, we often simplify the problem a bit so that it becomes digestible for the readers. If it requires 5-6 pages of mathematical equations before you can describe the problem precisely, then I think many readers will not be interested anymore in looking at what exactly makes the heuristic performing well. So I'm always most proud of simplifications. For example, sometimes we drop constraints when we do real-world research. Companies don't like it, but if you can show in the end that you never violate them, it's sometimes enough to convince them. And these are the findings I like to publish in the papers, but not we've done it in the past, but not the full complexity with all the unpleasant details nobody wants to read. That's my opinion. I also find it tedious job to review papers which requires so much work to understand all the details.
I
but
understand.
This is a very subjective vision on.
No, that's perfectly understandable. Yeah, and we were talking about metaheuristics or heuristics just now. How do you see their progress since the 80s and 90s?
Yeah, that's a nice question again. So I sometimes wonder whether there is really progress. So heuristics, meta-heuristics, local search-based heuristics are fantastic because I believe you can solve any combinatorial optimization problem of some size. I'm not talking about solving optimally, but we can do in a few days a solution that largely outperforms what the companies have. So that's the advantage of meta-heuristics and local search heuristics. But in my I'm a bit worried that we have become lazy in developing local search heuristics and meta-heuristics. So you will find some papers saying, okay, here's a nice problem, and we have solved it using taboo search, and we do insert and swap. And here is the table of our results. And I'm sorry you cannot compare it because nobody else understands this problem, but taboo search works. And then sometimes they do another algorithm, iterated local search, whatever you want, and they say, iterated local search outperforms taboo search, or vice versa, doesn't matter. And I'm worried that these papers are not really sharing what is important. And what I find missing in many papers is how the solution is represented. did the authors employ specific data structures? Do these data structures help to speed up evaluation, to be efficient in modifying solutions and so on? We don't read this. And consequently, when somebody tries to implement such a paper, if you don't explain it, people will struggle. And I'm guilty. So I have many publications in which we did not think about sharing this knowledge because this is implementation knowledge. And now, as I'm getting older, I realize that's what we have to share and not the acceptance mechanism or, yeah, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a bit controversial what I'm saying.
No,
guess,
no, it's I understand too. I had a mentor also called Marconi Jamilson Freitas Souza. He was the also supervisor of Túlio in Brazil.
I know.
Yeah, so he was the guy who taught me the importance of giving implementation details for other people to reproduce it. And later on, I also, working with Thibault and other guys, getting more aware of the importance of doing efficient local search and trying to, work on the complexity, also do smart ways of performing the search without having high CPU times and things like that. And these contributions are more fundamental in a way that you can reuse that in other meta-heuristic framework. Eventually, you have to choose one meta-heuristic to test those ideas. But I think even if you are forced to use one of them, table search or ILS or large neighborhood search, if the key ideas are properly introduced, and they tend to be more general and also result in more impact and relevance over the years. I think it's so I completely
couldn't
agree with
agree
you.
more. I completely agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So changing topics a little bit, you were the chair of the program committee of Euro 2018 in Valencia. How was the experience, and do you have any anecdotes to share regarding this position?
Oh yeah. Many more than you want to hear. So first of all, let me be clear. I didn't want to do it. I said no to Ramon Alvarez Valdez and Ruben Ruiz, who are very good friends, but I said no many times and then they decided to visit my group in Ghent. They both came, and I guess, they made me say yes at that time, and I trusted they would do a lot of work on the organization and so on. I trust them completely. They are very hard workers, very, very nice people. But I didn't know what I was beginning at. I was really frightened that I would fail. But then, the biggest difficulty of organizing such a conference is to deal with all the emails when the conference is about to begin. This is unbelievable. And these emails have nothing to do with science or with operational research. Believe me. For example, we received questions like, can I bring my dog to the conference? Could you? Yeah. Yeah, really. I mean, in a sense, these were easy to answer. Could you find me a room with hot water? I'm not joking. These were the questions we received. So, yeah, after having received a few of them, I passed all these questions on to Ramon and Ruben. I was not prepared for answering such questions.
This is so good. I mean, I know it's awkward, but it's very funny.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. Of course, there were serious questions. We felt very sorry for people who didn't manage to get their visa in time. So this also happens. And living in a country with almost no restrictions, it was really hard for me to see how people who had organized their trip in time could not attend due to visa restrictions or late visa arrivals. So these are not as funny as the dog and the
No,
bathtub, but
yeah. I have a question that originally came from my wife because she also met you and she saw that you were super active and fun and she loved hanging out with you. But then she asked me, I wonder how Gret managed maternity and work, especially when her kids were small.
Okay. Yeah, it's a nice question. I think I've been relatively lucky. So when the eldest was born, I continued working from home. We didn't have video conferences with the colleagues yet, but each time she was sleeping, I worked in a rather relaxed manner. It was like being on a sabbatical, I think, fully focused on research. But then when the second one was born, it was a bit harder, and yeah, because I had to take the second one along to pick the eldest from school, from kindergarten and so on. But actually, when they were very little, it was almost easier than a couple of years ago, because we put them in bed at 7 o'clock or so, and then I could resume my work and continue. That was nice. Yeah, I recall some moments which made me really feel horrible when I was picking them up from school and I saw one of them was ill, red. And then I thought, oh my God, I have so much work and I will have to go to the doctor. How will I manage? My husband was working late evenings very often, and so I remember that I thought, I am a bad mother because I think my child should not be ill now. But well, we had some help from the grandparents from time to time. I used to call my parents. Do you have anything to do tomorrow morning? Why? Well, I think one of them is a bit, and then my parents said, "Don't worry, we will come." So that was comfortable.
I see.
I can highly recommend children.
Okay. So it seems that your daughter is sitting next to you. So maybe I can ask her directly whether you are a good mom or if you have been a good mom.
Oh, she's smiling.
Yeah.
Come here, Clara.
So how are you? Tell me about your mom.
Well, she is a great mom.
Oh.
Yes.
This was unprepared.
Yeah. And does she give you a lot of support, or she's usually working? So tell me more about that.
Yes, she enjoys helping me with school and stuff because, yes, especially the math and such things. She's really interested in all the stuff we learn at school, and she always wants to help. So that's really nice.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
It's a bit flattered, Anna. It's flattered because you asked, is she always working, and she answered to another question. Yeah, I guess I'm working a lot, but
yeah, no, that's okay, perfectly understandable. So in some countries like Belgium, they are trying to decrease the gender imbalance in juries, committees, and so on. On the one hand, this seems to be a nice initiative, but on the other hand, it can add a lot of extra work, right?
Yes, especially in engineering faculties where the number of female staff is very low. And I can testify, and many of my female colleagues will join me in there, that we have a far larger amount of admin duties, committee work than average men do. I believe it's true. Maybe it's a perception, but I believe it's true. Because so naturally we would have a very high gender imbalance, but by forcing each committee to have at least 1 or 2 female members, or by forcing that not more than 2/3 should be from the same gender, the underrepresentative group has to do a bit more. That's my impression. I'm not sure if it is really objective, but
yeah, but in a way, it's a progress, right? To try to take some measures to decrease the imbalance. But then on the other hand, I understand, as I said, it can be time consuming for those who are not part of the majority.
Yes. So I am not against, absolutely not against, and I also think that it gives women the opportunity to learn about these management duties, committees which give advice to the academic board and so on. So it's really a good opportunity to learn about it, because I think many of us would maybe not volunteer for such jobs, maybe not. So it's a good opportunity. But yeah, let me give you another anecdote. So I'm chairing the advisory committee of my faculty. So we are reading applications, selecting people for an interview, interviewing them and so on for the new professorships. And it's a time-consuming job. We have many open positions on the many campuses in our faculty. And so for each position, the university appoints a search committee. So the faculty has to propose a number of people in the search committee. If there's no woman, the group will add a woman. And if there's a woman, they will swap order and make the woman chairing the committee. And I understand the reason. So international research seems to have shown that women are more likely to think that the job could be for them if a woman is inviting them to apply. But at some point, all these women were completely fed up with being appointed chair of a committee without ever having been asked or informed about it. And they are relaxing the rules now a little bit, which is okay. So it's difficult to choose a position in here. I haven't quite made my mind up about whether I like it or not. But,
okay.
Yeah.
So Gret, thank you so much for your time. I had, it was fantastic to talk to you and to learn more about your life and your research work. So it was lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anand. See you hopefully in Belgium when you visit us again.
Or in Brazil, when you come to this side one more time. I know you already visited Brazil, but now it's time to maybe go up north and come to our town, João Pessoa. So, of course, you're most welcome to come.
I may consider it. That would be nice. Yeah.
Okay, so keep in touch, Gret, and let's meet one of these days. Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Good night or good morning.
Good night. Ciao.